Erev Tov B'Tay. Let's continue talking about the holiday. We got more things to discuss. Another question comes up, which is that how many days does a person really have to eat matzot on the holiday? Does he have to eat matzot every day? Or really not so much, whatever. So the truth is, that the first night, as we already mentioned several times, it's a mitzvah to eat a kazayit of matzah from the Torah. Second night also, we're outside of Israel, so we do also second night, which is rabbinical. So those two are obligations, those 2 nights. But what about the rest of the time? Let's say, in Chol HaMoed. Does he have to eat matzah every day in Chol HaMoed? Right? So the truth is, that there is no obligation to eat matzah. If a person doesn't want to eat on Chol HaMoed matzah, he wants to eat rice, or, some other stuff, whatever, right? Just wants to have rice with some, meat, whatever. Enjoy that. So he can do that. There's not an obligation to eat rice every time. To eat matzah every time. But the Gaon of Vilna says, nevertheless, right, even though there's no obligation to eat matzah, but it's good for the neshama, to eat matzah every day. It's healthy for the neshama. Because it's the proper time for this, because of the Passover, it's very holy time. So eating matzah is good for you, it's healthy for you, healthy for your neshama. So if you want to eat matzot every day, it's very, very good. You don't have to eat so much, 1, 2, 3, whatever. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. But the point is, that it's a mitzvah to eat more, as it's good for you. Not obligation. If a person doesn't like it, he's not obligated to eat every day matzot. Not obligated. But on Yom Tov, right, he has to have seudot, with bread. So he has to eat matzah. There's no choice. How are you going to have a seudah without bread? Right? There's no. The truth is, it's a machloket about that. But we paskin that on Yom Tov, a person has to have seudot with bread. So the bread that we have on Pesach is matzah. That's what we have, right? So on Yom Tov, you should have matzot for every meal. As we said, on Yom Tov, how many meals do we have? 2, not 3, right? Like Shabbat. We don't do Silash Lishit, right? Rabbi's not going to say, go down, Silash Lishit. He's not going to say. Why? Because there is no Silash Lishit, right? On Yom Tov. On Shabbat, we have that. Okay, so that's the thing, right? That's the way it works. So matzot is a good thing, Baruch Hashem, not obligation, as we said. Okay, fine. So what else do we want to talk about? Let's talk a little bit about also what happens over there after, the Passover holiday starts. The second night of Passover, we already start counting the Omer, So how many days of the Omer do we count? It says in the Torah, you have to count 49 days, right? And the 50th day is Shavuot. That's the way it is, right? Day number 50 is Shavuot. So what's the reason why we count the Omer? The truth is, there's a lot of deep things, secrets about this, about the qualities of counting on the Omer. It's like basically, the simple idea is like this, that you're counting the days to Matan Torah, because we receive the Torah on Shavuot. So we're counting the days, we want to receive the Torah. Every day we're counting, getting closer, one day closer. So as you get closer to receiving the Torah, what happens is, that also spiritually, you're acquiring more qualities, That's what we say, right? Netzach, Malchut, we mention all these things, right? Right? Yesod, or you mention all these things when we count the Omer, right? We say these things. Why do we say those things? Not everybody does that, by the way, but some people do it. Anyway, right, so we say because you're acquiring higher and higher level of Kedusha as you go along. So every night, you're going up and up and up and up in Kedusha, until when you get ready to receive Matan Torah, so now you're all ready, you've already acquired the Kedusha to receive the Torah, which requires, a certain amount of readiness, preparation. This is the whole thing, So that's why the Chazal say, it says in the Zohar Kadosh, that if you didn't count, even if you missed one day of the Omer, right? Okay, I like that. It's good. Right, so he's saying, he's right. It's so even if you miss one day, you didn't really do the mitzvah. You didn't do it. You didn't do the tikkun. You know what I mean? You're missing something there. So therefore, he says, he says in the Zohar Kadosh that he's not ready to receive the Torah. This person, who didn't count the Omer every day. He doesn't have the kedusha, doesn't have the preparation. So he says he's not tahor, he's tameh. He's impure. He's not ready to receive the Torah. That's what it says about the counting of the Omer in the Zohar Kadosh. So therefore, a person has to be very careful with that. Make sure you count every day. How do you do it? How do you make sure you don't forget? You know what you do, right? Come to minyan. Come to minyan. If you come to minyan, you won't forget. If you stay home, pray at home, then you could forget. It could be. You never know, right? What's gonna be? If you go home, if you stay home, you don't come to the minyan. It's not good, no good. That's why another reason why you got to come to minyan. There's also, by the way, another reason that the more basic reason a person should try to come to minyan. Why is that? Because they say that the tefillah is accepted when there's a tzibur, 10 people. It's always accepted, the tefillah, no matter what, right? That's the way it is. But when you pray at home, by yourself, you have to concentrate very strong. You have to go with all your power, to have kavanah at home. Otherwise, the tefillah is not accepted. You understand? So it's very hard to concentrate like that. Every bracha, every word, to have kavanah. It's very hard. So that's why, try to come to minyan, because if you don't, your prayer is not going so good up there. You know what I mean? It's not being accepted so good. So come to minyan. Not only this time of year, but also all year, right? Come to minyan. Try to come. That's why it says in Shulchan Aruch, Ishtadel Adam, right? Le'avo leminyan. Person should always try, to come to minyan. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you're busy, whatever, you got something to do, you're doing a mitzvah, you got some business meeting, I don't know, whatever it is, something is holding you up. So you can't come. Okay, I understand, I understand that, but you should always try, always try, have it in mind. Minyan, 7 o'clock, okay, yalla, let's go. 6 o'clock, 6:30, shachrit, 7 o'clock, mincha, right? Always try to go to minyan. Have it always in your mind. Some people, they have a hard time with this, with the timing. You know what I mean? Like they're always, they're always running late. And by the way, who's the worst with this? Sometimes the rabbis are the worst. You know why, right? You know why? Because they're learning Torah all the time. And they don't want to stop learning. This is the thing. So they say like this. That Maran Rabbi Shalom. We used to pray over there Arvit 8 o'clock at night. This was the thing. 8 o'clock. Before he passed away, a few years, it was like that. Every night, 8 o'clock. So what happened was, that Moshe, his son, would go to Maran, and he was learning Torah all the time, day and night, right, non-stop. So he would go to Maran, and he would tell him, Abba, it's time to go to Minyan, right? It was downstairs, just downstairs, to have to go down, that's all. The shul was downstairs from his house. You know what I mean? No big deal. Like, somebody lives up here, like something like that, right? But, sometimes Maran, he was learning, he was into it. So he would tell him, you would yell at him, leave me alone! I'm learning now! Leave me alone! That's what he would do, So sometimes Moshe would get yelled at, because he would go tell Maran, it's time to pray Arvit. You understand? So the rabbis are always, they're always in learning. This is why you see, sometimes, they're not coming sometimes on time to Minyan, because they're always in Torah, The Torah for them is the most important thing. I'll tell you something interesting.
What's more important, to learn Torah or
Good
pray?
question. Oh, this is exactly the question I wanted to tell you, right? Exactly the point. What's more important, Ben, to learn Torah or to pray, right? So the truth is, that learning Torah is from the Torah, right? It's a mitzvah from the Torah. Ve'agita bo yomam v'layla, right? It says all kinds of psukim, right? Ve'agita bo yomam v'layla. It's from the Torah, the mitzvah of learning Torah. So, and we say Talmud Torah, can I get kulam? Right? So it's against all the mitzvot, the Talmud Torah. So it's much, much more important than tefillah. I'll tell you how we also know, right? There's another thing. That it says in the Talmud like this, that Rabbi Yehuda, in the old days, the Emoraim, the Tanaim, in the Talmud, these guys, they were on such a high level, in Talmud Torah, they didn't need to go to pray. They didn't need to pray. They were patur. This is the way it was, So it says in the Talmud, Rabbi Yehuda, he would, every month, he would finish the whole Torah, learn the whole Torah, from beginning to end, Can you imagine? The whole Torah, right? Chumash, Navi, Talmud, Halacha, Midrash, Kabbalah, Jabbalah, Akol, everything. In 1 month, he would finish everything. And then they say, in the end, he would do one tefillah. Once a month, he used to pray. He didn't pray every day. Understand? So you see from there, of course, right? The Talmud Torah is much, much higher than tefillah. The whole the Talmud Torah, lo briti yomam v'layla, right? Chukot hashamayim v'aretz lo samti. What this pasuk means? If it wasn't for the Torah, the world wouldn't exist, The world stands on the Torah. You know what I mean? That's the thing, So if you don't have Torah, you have nothing. There's no world, there's no olam, there's nothing. If they don't learn Torah for 1 minute in this world, the world is destroyed. You understand? So it holds up everything, the Torah, holds up the whole world. Because the Torah, the world is made with the blueprint of the Torah. It says, right, in the Zohar Kadosh and Talmud, it says there that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how did he create the world? He looked in the Torah, and from the Torah he created the world. Understand? So the world is a function of the Torah itself. You understand? So the world is based on the Torah. So if you don't have Torah, you don't have no world, you have nothing. That's the thing, So Talmud Torah can't get kulam. That's what we mean. That's what it means when we say that. Okay, you get the point, right? So anyway, right? But as we said, right? A person should always try to come to minyan, though. There's a machloket, by the way, in the Bet Yosef regarding this. Over there's a machloket. Some say there is an opinion over there. It says that a person who's Talmid Chacham, and he's learning Torah day and night, he doesn't have to go to minyan. He can pray at home. Why? Because his house is Bet Midrash. It's kadosh. He's learning Torah all the time there. It's Bet Midrash, so he doesn't have to go to minyan. But the Rambam says no, not like that. He says, you know what? Even a Talmid Chacham has to go to minyan. So what does that mean? If he has Bet Midrash, he needs to have 10 people there at least, from minyan. Otherwise, he should go to minyan. That's the thing. So we pass like the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, that even a Talmid Chacham should try to go to minyan. Because when you go to minyan, you have a lot of light that comes to you. A lot of power, from Hashem. A lot of kedusha. Yeah, of course, yeah. And that comes with you all day, all night when you come. So when you don't come to minyan, it's not going to be so good for you. You're going to be a little bit in darkness, Choshech. Right, that's no good. You don't want that, right? So you want to try to come to minyan. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So you get the idea, Rabbi. So as we said, right, if you come to minyan, you're not going to forget Sfirat Omer. That's what we're saying, right? So make sure you come, right? And now they have also these modern things, right? These new fashioned things. You know what they have, right? They have the app, that reminds you on your phone to count the Omer, right? Right? So if you're one of those modern guys, cool guys, right? You're gonna have an app like that. It's gonna buzz you, every day, for the Omer. Oh, time for the Omer. Right? Hopefully you will hear the buzz, whatever. You can do all kinds of things like that as well, Just don't forget. So what happens if you did forget, right? What happens over there? So you got to be careful, There's a lot of things, by the way, you have to know about this. Let me ask you a question. Are you allowed to count the Omer before Shkiat HaChama? Yes or no?
No.
Asur. You're not allowed to make a bracha l'batala. So you have to make sure, during counting of the Omer, that the Arvit is going to be, after Shkiat HaChama, after Tzedek Kochavim. Because otherwise you cannot count the Omer. What are you going to do, count the Omer before Shkiat? It's still daytime. Asur to count, So you have to make sure, that it's late enough to do that. And so therefore, right, the earliest you can count, the proper time is when? When is the proper time to count? Tzedek Kochavim. When is that? About 15 minutes after Shkia, That's perfect. Perfecto. 15 minutes after Shkia. But b'diavad, if you counted, after Shkia, it's okay, It's okay. It's kasher. It's kosher. So you should always try to, wait till Tzedek Kochavim, lechatchila, but if the minyan is going after Shkia, they can count after Shkia. No problem, that's not a problem. But earlier than that, lo yotzai dechova, you didn't fulfill obligation. Chaval hazman. Don't waste your time, right? How long do you have to count the Omer at night? All night you can count the Omer, right? If you forget, and you remember in your house, let's say you're about to go to bed, right? With your slippers, and your pajama, right? And you say, oh, I forgot to count the Omer. So count it right there, on the spot. You know what I mean? Before you go to sleep. Even if you wake up, like very early, it's still night, 5 o'clock in the morning, right? Whatever. Still night. You can still count there also, if you forgot. But don't wait, try to do it on time. Zizim makdimin, right? So what happens if you didn't count all night? What happens there? Right? Let's say the morning came around, Amud HaShachar, right? Time to come to Shachrit. The rabbi is waiting for you, right? For Shachrit. What do you do there? So there we tell you, count the Omer, but without a bracha. That day, you're going to count without a blessing. You're not allowed to bless because you missed already one. So we tell you, that day, no bracha, count the Omer, just like it will be at night. But in the daytime, it's a machloket, right, in the Rishonim. Some say you can do that, some say, so therefore we don't bless. So we give you until the evening, right, Shkiyat HaChama, to count that night that you missed, but without a bracha. And then, the next night, right, if you missed that other night, the next night you can count with a bracha. Because there's a 6 fikah, 2 doubts over there. So next night you can count with a bracha, but that day you count without bracha, because you missed it at night. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'Amen. Rabbi Chanan Kashomer, אז הקדוש ברוך הוא לעזור לישראל, והתיר להכיר ברא להם תורה ומצוות שנדון לחפש, למען צדקו יגדיל תורה ויאדיר.